Welcome, everyone, to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior and neurolinguistic practitioner specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DNB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamzalek.com. In today's fourth episode of season 34, I'm very excited to have Bryan Charleau as our special guest, discussing the many challenges he faced as an athlete in his senior year of high school, with the multiple ACL injuries that he had to face and heal from, and the transition to career and hardship through the process, and of course, the self-publishing hurdles that came with all of it. So without further ado, and as with all of our previous episodes, I will leave it up to the guest to probably introduce himself, as no one else can do a better job. Bryan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dan. I just wanted to first off say thank you for having me on the podcast. I've really been looking forward to it. So I'm happy to be able to do this. As you mentioned, I was a student athlete growing up in multiple different sports. And actually, the injuries that you mentioned actually came in my college career, where I was attending Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec. And in my draft eligible year, I tore my ACL. And then during my rehab stint, I retore the same ACL, which sent me not even back to kind of ground zero, back even further than what I had originally had to overcome after the first injury. Working to get back on the field for my senior year, just to say that I could walk off the field my final time, transitioning into my career in sales, which I've been doing now for 15 plus years, which has had its many hurdles, as well as anybody in that profession can attest to. And then kind of final stop here was releasing a self-published book, helping those within the sales profession that are either looking into it or just starting out on kind of how to overcome some of the challenges that they might face, and being an open book source for them to reach out, ask any questions or any help that they might need, to kind of offer some mentorship there. So it's been a long 15 plus years, and it's kind of a blur looking back, but here we are. And I certainly enjoy talking about it and love having a platform like yours to help anyone that might be listening and talk about it.
Well, absolutely. Now, do you still live in Montreal?
No, but I did live there for about 8 years, so I'm in Toronto now.
Oh, Toronto. Okay, because I lived in Montreal for 21 years. So I used to went
Yeah,
to University of Montreal,
it's
where
quite the city.
yes, very cold city during the winter. It's like Antarctica. It's terrible, honestly. I mean, the winters there are just like endless. Uh, but yeah, so tell me a little bit more about when it comes to the type of sport that you did at the you said Concordia University, or was it which one?
Yeah, I was playing football at Concordia. I had been recruited there and been playing there for 3 years, and was just really hitting my stride and feeling comfortable with where I'd come to, with a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication as it takes to play at a university level, overcoming what that takes, and then to have the ACL injury take me out, and then again during rehab take me out once again. And it turned into about a 2 year rehab process just to be able to get back on the field and finish my eligibility there. And obviously, any hopes of moving beyond the university level were kind of dashed, which took a lot of realigning on my own end and moving forward. But I was, very proud of the fact to be able to step back on the field after the injuries, play out my final season with my friends and teammates, and then move on to the next part of my life.
So, did it affect you mentally? I mean, of course, if you felt that the football was going to be a possible career to go either in the NFL or any team in Canada, if they have NFL out there, did you feel like kind of, okay, well, now that you have the ACL injury and you know that you cannot practice that sport anymore, did it kind of like put you into any form of depression?
Yeah, I had to deal with a massive roller coaster of emotions, because up until that point, I'd actually not had to miss any games previously, which in football is not an easy thing to do with all the bumps and bruises that we get with such a physical sport. So at the time, I had had aspirations of possibly playing in the CFL, which is the Canadian Football League.
Mhm.
There was an opportunity there if things continued to go as they were, but it was still going to be a lot of hard work, and certainly nothing was a guarantee. But when these injuries began to pile up, seeing something that you had worked for essentially my entire life, obviously getting my university education and my schooling was a high priority for me, but it always seemed like a secondary thing to my playing career because I just put so much time and effort into that. I really wanted to see how far I could take it. So when that was stripped away, yeah, there was a lot of low times. A lot of times I really had to rely on my support system with my family, my teammates, and my coaches who did an incredible job being there for me. But even with all that, that doesn't stop you from some of those lonely nights when you see things that you'd worked for being taken away from you outside of your control. So it was something I really, really had to work towards, considering I identified as an athlete my whole life, trying to find that new self identity and putting the same work I had put into a sports career into, the next chapter of my life.
And how long did it take you to heal from those ACL injuries? I mean, obviously, it's when you have ACL, then the next come along is the meniscus tear, and then a lot of other things like it's just like accumulating one injury after the other.
Yeah, so the first one was just a pure ACL tear, which was on pace to be about a 6 to 7 month recovery. And when I retore it the second time in that same knee, I was just about the 6.5 month mark. But this one, as you mentioned, came with a meniscus tear on top of it,
Oh,
and another surgery had to be done, and the whole process starts again, which was such a mental drain. Talk about, like, the lowest point was hearing that news from the doctor that it had been redone, and that again, just falling right. It's almost like climbing a tree and then falling, getting near the top and falling back down to the bottom, and realizing you have to start again. And the whole process took just over 2 years to make sure not only that I was fully physically healed, but there's a mental hurdle you have to overcome to be confident and trusting that knee again, that again you had injured for the second time, and having an additional injury on top of it with the meniscus. So I was probably physically healed within a year and a half, but the mental side of it took a full off season to get back before the start of that senior season.
mhm. And was it only in one leg that you tore the ACL twice, or it was distributed among the both?
No, it was the same one, which made it that much more complicated in terms of that mental hurdle that I
Okay.
had for it to trust it a third time, and knowing that if it happened again, like, I just don't know that mentally I would have been able to overcome a third time. So I was very hesitant coming back, and a lot of support and a lot of help from the physical therapy and the doctors that helped me out to get to that point, to be able to trust it again. I credit all of that to them, and the ability to get back out there and play one last season.
So after those injuries and those tears, and I know that like people in sport, they just like concussion is very very common in football. I mean, it's not just the limbs that get impacted; it's also the head, the speed that
Mhm.
you run, etc. Depending which position you had in the CFL, or I would say in the Concordia Sports. But did you feel after a certain time that it affected your morale? It affected the way that you see yourself, that you're not as strong physically that you thought you were because you were in that sport. What was the time where you transitioned into your career?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. And when you do play sports and you do play it at a high level, sometimes not purposefully, but just over time, you kind of get this invincibility feeling that you just go out there and you play because that's what you've always done, and you've never had it taken away before. So it really is a humbling experience to go through a serious injury in sports. And if there's other athletes out there, most of us go through it at some point. But when it does happen, it doesn't mean you can prepare for it. You can know the possibility is always there, but when it actually comes to fruition, there's no way to prepare for it other than to experience it and go through it as it's happening. And it was humbling, and it really made me appreciate that final year. But at the same time, going into that, I knew that there wasn't a next step or a next level to this, and it was going to be a new chapter in my life as soon as that final whistle went. There was no more to do. I was just not physically as good as I previously was. So that was a really hard scenario because I was able to kind of block that out of my mind for that during that recovery period, because that's what my main focus was getting stronger and trying to get back out there and dealing with my education at the same time. So there's a lot going on to kind of allow myself to mentally not, tell myself it was over yet.
Mhm.
But when that final whistle goes and there isn't a next game, there isn't a next step or a next league, it really hits you hard because the program must move on. It's
Yes.
just part of life, and players age out and they graduate and they move on to the next step. But once again, it's one of those things that you can only deal with as it's happening. There's nothing you can really do to prepare yourself
Correct.
for what it's going to feel like mentally. And
Mhm.
that was a really, really difficult adjustment in my life. Um, but again, I allowed myself to rely on the support of my family and friends and teachers and professors. And it really did help the situation. But, most athletes can attest to the fact that when that final game is over, it is a very tough transition mentally that a lot of people suffer through alone, because they do find it difficult to talk about, because as an athlete, you're supposed to be mentally tough and you're not supposed to feel these emotions. But it's near impossible to not when that career comes to an end.
Absolutely. And for all the listeners out there that I think we've passed almost 1.5 million by now, Brian. And those who do not know about the Canadian education system, it's not similar to the one to the US. So for us, a bachelor degree, it's actually 3 years in Canada, not 4 years like in the US. So I think, but we do have between high school and university, we have 2 years of college, which is, in between transition where you could actually decide what kind of specialty you want to get into when you get to university. So I think the system is a bit different. So after your 3 year graduation, did you stay in Montreal or did you move directly to Toronto?
I did stay in Montreal. Part of me was kind of hanging on to the ability to still be with some of the friends and teammates that I had in the city, people I had grown accustomed to with having lived there for a while. And I really did want to start my career in that city to see if it was something I could, find footing wise. And again, for those listeners, Montreal being a bilingual city, a lot of emphasis is put on, especially in the business world, being bilingual and being able to deal with local clients and customers as well in the French language. So I was really struggling with, I was learning the language, but not to the degree where I could have business conversations and those everyday talks with people. So I ended up being there for, 3 years
Mhm.
after, before finding an opportunity in Toronto and making a move back to Ontario, where I'm originally from. But that was also a hard thing to give up because, again, as silly as it sounds, that tie to still being in the city where I went to school and played and had friends with was kind of that last thread that I was holding on to, and to actually make that decision to leave everything that I'd grown accustomed to for that 7-8 years. Uh, it was that final thread, and it was a whole new beginning, and I was very nervous about that, and I was excited with the opportunity, but very nervous to know that that was the end of a chapter and starting a new one. And um, nerves were there, not knowing what the future was going to look like. But looking back, it was the best thing I could have done. But at the time, you don't know that that's how it's going to turn out, and it does take time to come to a realization of that decision.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, like as you know now, the political condition in the province of Quebec is not really the greatest. I mean, it's not really being managed properly in this province. So in a way, the GTA, which is the Greater Toronto Area, is definitely much more promising in terms of business, in terms of opportunities. So I think that you're at the right place right now, Bryan, versus being in Montreal. And I hear horror stories of friends because I still have a lot of friends and family members out there, and they all tell me, Dan, how lucky you are that you have left the country to have moved to the US, blah, blah, blah. And I understand their pain. I understand the taxation rate in Canada with
Yeah.
Quebec is almost 50% of the year you work for the government for free, which is lunatic. I mean, this is just, I mean, I cannot even fathom. I mean, it's like really, really scary on how there's not any like civil reaction, and people say, you know what, enough is enough. We're gonna have to kind of take reaction here or take some action. So at the same time, yes, it's kind of hard to leave Montreal, especially that you built a lot of good friends. But I think where you are right now is definitely much more. I would say a better time for you at this point. But when it comes to the book that you wrote, is the book about your story, or is it something about, you said, teaching or mentor people who are going into sales?
Yeah, so the book is called Pitching Sales, a complete guide to becoming a sales professional.
Okay.
And that, kind of everything about it is in the title. I really wanted to talk about the journey of becoming a sales professional, because there are a lot of people that get into um, sales that look at it as a way to kind of a starter job to get into something else within business, a different segment of the industry, whatever the case may be. But what ends up happening is a lot of those people end up staying in this career as a profession where they rely on this as their source of income to provide for themselves and their family and the people around them that they need to support. And I like the whole idea of pitching sales is pitching the idea that sales is an incredible profession to get into,
Mhm.
but buyer beware. This is not some job that just because you're good at talking to people or because you're an extrovert personality means you're going to have success with. It can be an incredible career and profession and provide for you things that other professions can't do, but it comes with a ton of work. It comes with a ton of things that maybe you're not aware of. And this was just an unvarnished version of what to expect when those things come along, how to help manage them, and things that maybe you didn't expect or things that you're having issues with or problems with. It's almost like a little guidebook to help you out.
Mhm.
And to your point, where is it about me? Yes, there's a lot of personal stories because I can only talk about my own experience
Mhm.
because I dealt with it firsthand. And I went through a very, very rocky road, especially starting again in a province where English isn't even the first language. So there was a lot of hurdles that I had to deal with. But when the idea of the book came about 10 years into my career, I would, you end up having a network of a lot of salespeople that you've met along the way from different industries, from different countries, from all sorts of different backgrounds. But seeing this overlapping, almost like a Venn diagram, where this middle comes with these bumpy roads, this roller coaster within the first 18 months of them starting up in sales. And those are the stories that I also tell. So they're not just mine, but they're things that I definitely experienced, but it's told through a different lens of somebody else. So it's not just feeling like, oh, this is just my story and that's the only one there is. No, this is accumulation of many people. But we talk about the stories and then how to get through them, what solutions they came up with, how they've been able to help other people get through them. And
Mhm.
then also being able to look back and say, well, if I knew this at that time, this is what I would have done as well. So it's just this conglomeration of all this to really help people that are getting into this and want to make a career of it.
But I think the most difficult challenge when it comes to sales, Bryan, is basically the self-motivation that you have to wake
Yeah.
up at the time that you need to wake up. There's no one breathing over your shoulder because most of them are working on commission or performance base, unless if there's a salary included as a base or not. But the thing
Mhm.
is that we tend to self-criticize about our ability or our communication styles to be able to kind of give the people the reason why to buy from us versus someone
Mhm.
else who offers the same product. So I think that we for those who are actually in sales have to really build a very thick skin and not let the outside words or I would say negative comment or naysayers say otherwise. So it's kind of like a very lonely yet I would say fulfilling job because no one will tell you what to do, when to do it. So in a way, this is definitely fulfilling, but at the same time, you're the one who have to take initiative in every part of your life.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Honestly, there's so many points that you touched on in uh that kind of that little soliloquy there, because half of what you talked about is in my book, if not all of it, in different sections and different chapters, because those are all factors that need to be accounted for. Just like there's so many things that I could talk on each one of those topics that you mentioned for 20 minutes, and we don't have that time. But you're so right, and that's what the depth of being good at sales comes from. Is it isn't just you show up in a 9 to 5, clock in and clock out, and expect to have success. The journey to being a sales professional, so much of it comes from behind the scenes and putting in work, listening to podcasts just like this,
Mhm.
listening to audiobooks while you're driving, reading, networking. Like there's so much that goes into it that if you come from a career where you just had a 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and turned everything off when you went home, where the easiest way to put that is time equals money in different professions. In sales, time does not equal money, especially when you're on a fully commissioned salary structure.
Yes.
Now there's different ways of going about it, which I talk about, but to think that you can walk into a company and see these people that have been there for 20 years who are able to manage their time and clients in previous networks effectively, you'll see like, well, they're only putting in 3 4 hours a day and having all this success. Well, if you think you can mimic that when you first get there, you're
Delusional.
missing the point.
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna be very, unfortunately, you're gonna be eating ramen noodles a lot if that's the structure you try to mirror, because all the what you're not seeing is what took them to get there. And what that was is you can be putting in 10 12 hours a day behind the scenes, educating yourself and getting yourself better, and not seeing that return right away,
Yeah.
and just building that. Like there's just so much to it. You just touched on so many good points. I think I think you summed it up perfectly.
But at the same time, and I'll tell my listeners, I didn't read his book yet. So that was just based on getting
It's
as,
great.
yeah, as an author. I mean, I am an author myself. I've written 10 books, so I know exactly what the challenges you went through with self-publishing. And the fact is that this is another hurdle in its own. So first and foremost, you're working with in a sector as a salesperson where you have to take the initiative to do the I would say learning on your own, researching, getting to understand the industry better, and so on and so forth. Then you combine that with sitting your butt down and having to write, having to be able to create a manual or a guidebook to be able to learn or teach others in a way that is very
Mhm.
simple yet very concise without boring them with some terminology that they will never really understand much, and then having to really get them to implement the strategies that you're offering in your book. So at the same time that this has, so you have to really bring it down to a level that anyone and everyone can understand. Because
Yeah.
based on your experience, you may use certain terminologies that they will need a dictionary to be able to understand the book. So at the
Mhm.
same time, it's kind of very complex because in my last book that I wrote, it's The Happiness Vortex. I use a lot of concept of quantum mechanics into the book because I combine it with the universe and the laws of attraction and all. And sometimes I have to reread myself to say, no, this is too complicated to write. I have to dumb it down.
Yeah, it's so true. And to your point, it's not as if I did this as like my, I had so much time on my hands that I'm like, oh, I might as well write this book. It really did blossom out of the idea of giving back and paying it forward, because I wouldn't have been able to get where I am today if it weren't for those people that helped me out when I was first starting.
Mm,
And I just realized that maybe there were people out there that weren't as lucky as I was to get some of the mentors in front of them that were willing to put their time and energy when they had their own job, as you mentioned, they're trying to make their own money to support themselves and their family, yet still took the time to help me because they saw what I was willing to put in, and that I was putting in that extra work, and I was worth helping
Hmm.
for their extra time. So that it came from that idea. Like, there's probably somebody out there who's willing to do that work, but doesn't have that person in front of them like I did. So if I can provide this guidebook for them to help them out and answer some questions they might be having, because what you touched on earlier, what you said perfectly, is we might be talking to people all day, every day, and we might have coworkers buzzing around us, but it's a lonely place, especially when things aren't going wrong and you don't feel you're getting the help or resources that you need to be successful at the same time. And this was just meant to be a guidebook. It's only 110 pages. It's meant to be read in a night or two and actionable for the next day, just to throw a little life raft out to somebody who wants to succeed in this, but just needs a little bit of help because it's rough around the edges still for them and need to get over the hump.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, I just want, because I'm not sure exactly how the self-publishing sector in Canada, how different it is to the one in the US. But I think, you have to go through the same logical process, which is you have to get your ISBN number. Then you
Mhm.
have to get, here in the US, that is, then you have to get your Library of Congress number. Now, in Canada, they don't have Library of Congress. So,
Yeah.
but you still have to have that number to put it into the publication page of the book. So I think the self-publishing field is very, very tough because people just go and think that, well, I'm going to go with the traditional publisher. But here's the big problem here, Brian, and I think you're going to concur. When you work so hard on your book and you spend years to be able to gather your ideas, gather your concept, etc., and then having to go talk to a publisher, give them the rights of your book, where they could decide to
Mhm.
do whatever the hell they want with it. And then if they do not market it properly, and then you tell them, well, where's the money? I said, well, the money is not there yet. You have to go and market it. You have to do the book signing. You have to do all that. So if you have to do the marketing yourself without the assistance of the traditional publisher, why would the hell would you use a traditional publisher? At least
Mhm.
with self-publishing, you have control of your revenue. You could go to Ingram and get it distributed. You could go to Amazon. You could go to Kindle. You could do anything you want, and the revenue goes to you directly. So I would highly recommend to everyone, and this is another way that combines with your sales pitch, which is if you write a book, you become the bestseller of your own book because you're the one who have to pitch it to all the organization that's going to distribute it all over the country or the world. So you writing a book at the same time as talking about sales pitch, I think this is the best combination.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with a few of those obstacles that you talked about, and it is a little bit different in Canada, but there's a lot of things that overlap and are the same. And to your point, um, the one thing that I tried to do, because I had imposter syndrome before I even started writing it. When I had the idea of writing it, the amount of times I told myself it was such a goofy idea and that I didn't have time for it and just focus on your career and all those other things that pop in your head when you're lying in bed with your eyes open staring at the ceiling.
Mhm.
uh, I faced all those things, and what I told myself I was going to do, because if there's anyone out there that's listening that's had the crazy idea of writing a book, but you're like, who is it for? Who's going to listen? Is it really going to help anybody? I can
Correct.
assure you, I had all of those same thoughts over and over and over again. And what I told myself is, I'm not going to sit here and research all the details that come into publishing a book, whether it be self-published, through a publishing agent, whatever the case may be, until I have some tangible things written on paper that I feel is worth publishing. So that's what I told myself to get myself going. I said, there's no point in thinking about how to publish a book if you don't even have words on paper yet.
That's
So I
true.
took, yeah, and I took that time and I was like, okay, and it grew, and I talked to other people in my network and I got ideas from them, and some people input some different things, and all of a sudden it started to form uh, this concept of what I believed was a helpful book to those that would be getting into this profession. And I printed it off and I read it and I said, this isn't very good at all. This was terrible. This is yammers on, and I don't think this is going to help anybody. And what I'm saying that for is, all the ideas were there, I still had imposter syndrome at that time, and continued. But what I said is, no, I have a concept here that I believe in. Sure, it's very, very raw right now, as I'm sure when you read your first copy of one of your books, you probably had similar thoughts, but you
Oh,
molded it.
I mean, how many times did I trash the first draft? Oh,
Oh,
I had to go back 3, 4, 5. Then I get my editor to listen, to read it.
yeah,
You had to trash it as well to say, no, you have to change this. You have to formulate that way. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But before we end, Bryan, and sorry to interrupt you,
no.
where can people find your book? Because we have just a couple minutes left.
So the book, as you mentioned, it is on Amazon. I
Mhm.
have a paperback. I did it through Audible as well. I'm a person who does a lot of audio books, so I thought it was a good um, medium to put it out on. And then you can also get it on Kindle through Amazon, or you can go to my website, which is pitchingsalesconsulting.com, and I run my social media, my website as well. So if you do reach out or have any questions, it goes directly to me. So you get direct questions. I'm always happy to help out and answer anything that comes through.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Bryan, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation to this episode by sharing with your audience some of your personal struggles to becoming a self-published author throughout your challenging sales career. Now, to all of our millions of listeners out there, we hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And we're also very excited of what's ahead of season 34 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Regardless of how long it takes to write your book, it's proof of your dedication. Every page you wrestle with, every doubt you push through, and every moment you choose to keep going has shaped you into a real author. Self-publishing your work isn't just an outcome. It's a bold declaration that your voice matters. The journey may have been long, but that's what makes your story powerful, because you lived it, not rushed it. Remember, the world doesn't reward those who quit. It celebrates those who persist. Your dream didn't fade. You carried it forward, step by step. Let this milestone remind you that patience and belief can outlast any obstacles. Keep writing, keep growing, and never shrink your vision. Your story is only just the beginning. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life. Stay tuned for our next episode.